going. So thanks everybody for attending the webinar for today. We're going to give you a direct look into elvex, what we've been building over the past almost year now over here on the elvex side, and kind of why we think it's important to be solving the problems that we're solving. So we're going to start out with a little slideshow here. Although it says 24 slides at the bottom of this, it's not. It's only like 10 or 11 slides. That's really going to frame kind of the opportunity that we think is important to solve in this space. And then we'll go directly into the elvex platform, tell you a little bit about how it works, tell you about how to do things with it, and hopefully there's going to be a lot of good questions between the slide deck and between the demo that I can answer. A couple of housekeeping things here. So first, it's not just me, Sachin, on this call. It's also John Levitt. We are two of the three co-founders over at elvex. John is going to be helping with fielding questions. So if you have questions during this webinar, feel free to ask them in the Q&A. You should see that at the bottom of your Zoom bar, or I guess in the middle of your Zoom bar. There should be a Q&A button where you can ask any questions. Feel free to ask those anytime you want, and we will be responsive to those over the course of the webinar. There might be some that we hold off on because there's going to be a more appropriate time to answer those, and there might be some that John interrupts directly and has me answer, or he can answer himself inside of it. There also might be a few that John just takes on his own and he'll answer via chat. So with that said, I think that's it. John, is there anything else you want to just say hi really quick?
Hi, everybody. Good to see you. And yeah, Sachin's going to take over. I'll be on the Q&A.
All right, so let's get into it. So yeah, like I said, we started elvex almost a year plus ago. We've been actively working on building this platform in the AI space. And the main reason that we wanted to tackle AI and help think about how companies are going to use it is because we had a lot of stumbling. We saw a lot of stumbling in this space for good reason. There's kind of four main problems that we saw that we think are, some of which are accelerating and some of which are just staying still, that needs to be tackled to really get good return on investment adoption of AI within each company. The first problem that we see in the space is that there's just risks that's inherent with AI that didn't exist with other technology before. Those can be risks around cybersecurity, risks around compliance, inaccuracy of the data, and just how people get access to this stuff. So these risks are ongoing risks that every organization has to consider within the scope of AI, this technology that is different than prior technologies because of the nature of it being probabilistic, because of it using training data, because of people having access to it, plus their own data to do a whole host of things. And so this just needs to be taken off the table. Two, I'm sure everybody here has experienced this over the last maybe 6 months, over the last year, but AI is kind of everywhere right now, which also kind of means that it's nowhere. It's like shopping in a grocery store with new products appearing left and right. Prices are changing. Every product has an AI label strapped upon us. And that means that doing things with intent and purpose with AI can be hard. Because everything is claiming itself to be AI. And so there's kind of a lack of control that's existing in the space when AI is getting brought up and when you're thinking about how to utilize it inside your organization. Problem three is kind of a problem, but also a good thing, right? Like AI can upskill basically everybody at your company. Everybody can figure out a way to utilize it to be more productive, to get their jobs done faster, to accomplish things that maybe they've never been able to accomplish in the past. But with that comes a whole host of questions that you have to consider, like who should get access to this technology and how? What data should they be able to upload into this stuff, and who else should have access to that? What type of support, training, enablement are we going to get with this new technology? Is this stuff reliable? Can we use this in production? Can we use this to answer customer questions? And what is the overall return on investment of purchasing technology like this? These are questions that a lot of companies are contending with, and they're standing up things like AI steering committees or AI councils to help address these questions, which I think are really good ways to tackle this from a strategic perspective. But it's a huge obstacle. How do we do this again with kind of intent and purpose in a way that's going to make sense for our organization? And then problem number four is that the stuff is pretty new. It being new means that the future of this is opaque and there's a lot of complexity involved. We have the infrastructure layer that's pretty sound right now. You have your cloud companies like an AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure, Snowflake, Databricks that are kind of tackling the groundworks of how to get these things stood up. But the platforms are kind of relatively new here. Platforms like OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta with Llama, Google, and other ones that are appearing almost every week now. The thing that you have to be really considering is what is the best AI platform to build on top of? And that can change week to week, that can change month to month. And we also see that organizationally, some of these things that seem like they're really solid can be very kind of risky or very unpredictable. We saw that last kind of Thanksgiving when very quickly OpenAI was the leader, but then we didn't know if the CEO was going to be there. Was that CEO going to go and join Microsoft? We didn't know about the executive team. And even yesterday, we saw that three of the executives at OpenAI are going on extended leave. Not exactly sure why, but that just brings about the question of how do we tie ourselves to a technology that is going to be the leading technology for the future? And that's kind of a hard bet to take right now. Finally, we have a bunch of applications we talked about at the very beginning as being the kind of number one problem with this stuff, that it's AI is kind of everywhere. How do we pick the right technologies to use inside of our organization? So we really think that AI needs to be harnessed. And again, we think this needs to be done with the right kind of intent and purpose to make the things that you think are going to work with AI a reality. And we do that by becoming a layer in between all of the AI models that exist there in your company, an AI management and enablement platform that's really built for enterprise. We do this in a totally new way to leverage AI that's built and controlled by you being the company, you being the leaders of the companies, and you being the actual users here. How do you build the things that are going to work in the way that you want, that you control, that you are able to permission and give access to in the right way? And we do this in four ways. We make it centralized, so it's a unified experience that everybody has access to. We make it flexible so that you can pick and choose what models you want to bring to the table. We make it secure so that the data that you're using here and the privacy that are in and around that data are taken into account. And we make it easy, which we're going to show you in a second, how easy it is to build an AI app, get going with it, connect it to the right data, and make it meaningful and return on investment positive for your organization. So why elvex is important right now? We want you to harness AI so that it doesn't overwhelm you. It doesn't become scary for you. It doesn't feel like something that's confusing for you. We want to help you accelerate your adoption of it inside your organization by making it available for everyone, not just developers or business users, but everybody to use in a way that's going to help them build around AI in a meaningful way. And then finally, we want to unleash it. This means that you don't get controlled with how you and where you're going to use AI inside of the software that you're picking and buying off the shelf, but you dictate it. You create the apps that you're going to use. You connect it to the right models and data, and this is going to unleash it for all the purposes that you need inside of your organization. All right, so with that, let's get into a demo here. I'll pause really quick though, see if there are any questions that we have about kind of how we're framing the landscape here and our approach to AI.
There's a couple questions, Sachin, but I think you're going to answer them as we go through. So I'm going to skip past those for now, and I'll call them back up later if you don't address them in the natural course.
All right, sounds good. So let me switch my screen to elvex. All right. So this is elvex. Elvex you can think of as almost an operating system where you can build and use AI apps across your organization. I'm going to go through three different ways you can think about using elvex. So the first way is as a user of AI apps. The second way is as a creator of AI apps. And those two aren't mutually exclusive. You can be both a user and a creator. And then finally, as an administrator of AI for your organization and what that means for you. I'm going to start out as a simple user here, and we're going to go into quick things that we can do to help us understand how elvex is going to allow me as a user to achieve results relatively quickly. So just to orient you, we're on the home screen right now. At the very top, we have kind of the most recent apps that I've been using. And this is actually my kind of account with elvex. So these are real apps that I use all the time. We have some bookmark apps that are important for me down here. And then we have our sidebar where it's also giving me kind of conversations. You can see like some posts that I've created recently, some settings that I have, and then finally the apps, my most recent apps here at the top left. I'm going to go into an app directly, so I'm going to click on the Add Optimizer Assistant. And so this is an app where we can see at the right that performs analysis, generates insights and summaries of data to help recommendations on ad campaigns. And so I have a set of data that I'd like it to look at. So I'm going to connect it to my Google Drive here. And I'm going to go into elvex, and then I'm going to go into, I think, MISC. Is that where it is? No, that's not the right one. Demos. That's right. Okay, so I have the set of data here. This is basically insertion order data for a media company. So you can imagine myself being a media company where I have a bunch of ad data that I filled out and I want to get some analysis on this. So there's a few things that I have enabled with this app in addition to kind of some settings and rules that I placed here. And we'll go into the full configuration of apps a little bit later. I also see that I have two tools enabled, data analysis and web browsing. And then I see that the model that I've selected for this app is GPT-4 Omni, one of the latest models from OpenAI. So I'm going to just say, tell me a little bit about this data. So we have the Ad Optimizer Assistant analyzing the connected file, which was pulled from Google. It is giving me a sense of what the file represents. And so it's a spreadsheet. And so this file has these column headers that you can see at the top here. It's pulling up some sample rows from the data to give me a sense of kind of real live here. We do this at elvex because, and this is like different than what you might experience in other platforms, because you think it's really important for you to be able to verify that the things that you're seeing actually exist within the data itself. We all know that there is a chance that AI models can hallucinate here and there. And so any place that we can give you a sense of, hey, this is actually what data exists here is something we're going to show. So you even see that when we click on show details of the file itself, and then the sample rows here with the inline text. Yeah, so this all looks pretty good. So yeah, I do want some analysis. So tell me if there are any areas of this campaign, or these campaigns rather, that we can improve on. So what's happening here is it's using the tool that we have, data analysis, to basically run a SQL query, which is showing you at the top here, to understand some basic analysis in and around these campaigns. And it's giving us some recommendations for improvements. There's a higher CPM with prints. There's ability to optimize TV campaigns, and maybe there's some areas here on digital media and radio. Yeah, tell me more. And so we're letting the model basically decide here other details that it might want to pull up from me. Obviously, if I was like an ad analyst myself, I would have very kind of specific things I might want to ask of this data. But in this case, I'm not, and so I'm just asking for some broad kind of justifications or analyses related to this. And so that is just a quick way to show you that we have this app that's an ad optimizer assistant that was created that we're using to get detailed insights around this specific area, which is kind of advertising campaigns for it. I'm going to go back home, unless if there are any questions, and John, feel free to just interrupt me if there are, to show you kind of another example here.
We do have
Okay.
one question, but I think we'll get to it in a moment. So I'll call it out after you go through this next part.
Okay, great. So one of the things that's really nice about the way that elvex works is we're not only thinking about these individual apps as a way for you to go in and utilize AI, but we're also thinking about how we can route things in the right way. And so this is one of the values of what we call the home app. The home app can be your go-to thing where you just throw things at it and it's going to help you accomplish things. It's going to do that though within the scope of what you have created for your organization or even individually what you've created for yourself. So in this case, I don't know about you guys, but when you're doing business, you always get thrown these like NDAs that you have to like review and analyze and figure out whether it makes sense. And so maybe I'm going to actually figure out if elvex can help me analyze an NDA here. So I have an NDA that I need to analyze. I'm going to throw that in my home app, which is here. I'm just going to hit send. And so that's going to take me into this experience where I have some things that have been personalized for me directly here. Just the way that I like to chat with AI. I wanted to know a little bit about myself. I wanted to use different things to respond and make things clear. Oh, let's try that again. And this just gives us a way to basically personalize the home app experience for ourselves. And so one thing that you can see happening here is that elvex noticed that I needed to analyze this NDA, but I also have this app here called Agreement Analysis Aid. And this app in particular was created to do exactly what I needed to do, which is to analyze legal documents and give me a summary of the document and tell me if there are any things that any areas of negotiation or anything that's like non-standard or important here. So actually that sounds like a really good use of this specific request. So I'm going to go over to the agreement analysis aid and I'm going to attach an NDA that I have in my Google Drive again. So go to elvex, go to demos, and there's that NDA. And so now elvex is using the agreement analysis aid as the app to use to basically understand what's going on with this NDA itself, and then hopefully providing me some good recommendations around whether this is a good thing to sign or whether I should try to negotiate any specific terms here. And we'll give it a second to fire. This is where we come into some things that exist with models right now, where some models don't always give us the response that we want. So actually what I'm going to do with this app is I'm going to go into the app settings here. It looks like there might be some issues with getting responses from Claude 3.5 Sonnet. That's an Anthropic model. And I'm going to go into this setting itself, and I'm going to change that to OpenAI. I'm going to do that for Omni one because we were having success with that before. And this is really important. You guys might have experienced this yourself when you're using models directly, where you might have a model that's just not giving you the type of responses that you want. So now we can go back to that agreement analysis aid. We see that the model here is GPT-4 Omni, and I'm going to try it again. Oh, right. I have to reattach that file. Thank you, elvex. So let me do that again. Here we go. Oh, let's try it again. There we go. And it looks like there's a lot of issues with this NDA. We have it defining the key clauses and highlights. Um, and there's some non-standard or important areas here. So all information secret forever. It's a 20-year non-compete. It's a penalty of 10 million. And I have good areas where I could potentially negotiate here. And so, again, that is a way where we can take the advantage of a request that was sent to the home app that then's highlighting an agreement analysis aid. And you guys saw that when we switched the model, this started to work here. So again, that's speaking to the point of being able to have access to any models that you want to use, and making sure that you're getting the reliability that you expect out of them. So let me pause there. See if those questions were answered, John. If there are any other ones that I can answer for the group here.
Yeah, there's a couple questions that I think we can combine into a single answer here. One of the questions is just about which AI providers we have integrated within elvex, and there's another question about how elvex can assist in creating policy frameworks and enforcing security and governance. Not exactly the same question, but somewhat related in terms of how we can respond there.
Yeah. So on the provider side, we're adding new providers and models all the time. But when you add a provider here, you can see some of the models that we're supporting out of the box. So that includes OpenAI, Cohere, Anthropic, Mistral, and Azure OpenAI. I'll pick on Azure in particular because that might help you with the policy and governance side of the equation. There are more and more companies that want to make sure that any AI they're using is not leaving the bounds of instance that they're setting up. And so what's nice about Azure OpenAI is that you can use Azure to set up a private instance of OpenAI, meaning you're not sending anything over to OpenAI itself. And you're only getting kind of like the model usage and responses out of that. So that's one way that you can just enforce a data policy around this and a data governance issue around this. But there are other things that we enable with elvex that enforce this too. So this is kind of the framework as now an admin where you're setting policies and you're setting kind of governance around this stuff. So for example, you might want to enforce that as your home app, there's a specific model that people are using. You also might want to make sure that regardless of what anybody sets individually within an app, you're always redacting PII information or you're always redacting financial information. And this gives you a level of security to make sure that nothing that is sensitive on your maybe customer data side is leaving the bounds of this instance and then being sent over to the models. Finally, as an admin, we have different ways to set permissioning of team members and users. And so you can set different people as admins, as users, and even as super admins, where they get kind of a higher level of view around what can and should be used. There's also kind of direct integrations with SAML and SSO providers if you want to enforce a permissioning policy that you already have at your company and you want that to federate throughout kind of your instance of elvex. So that's some of the things you can do to set those things up. On the compliance side, we also offer the ability to log everything. This becomes important in two different ways. So in one way, this is important for you to be able to see what is happening. And if you need to pull back the curtains on, hey, there's been a certain issue and we need to dive in and figure out what happened with this, you're able to do that through the logs. This also tends to be a nice way to understand just usage of different stuff. So if I want to look at my meeting briefing assistant and I want to see who is using it and how they're using it, I can see this here. There's also different levels of settings you can set for this. So the way that we have this here, it's kind of full fidelity. You get full transparency with what's happening around a model. So if we wanted to look at kind of a specific request here and understand, okay, here's the prompt that was sent out, here's the response that we got back, or even the full payload of what we're sending over to the model, we get that here. But if you wanted to say, hey, I don't want to look at what every individual is using or doing in terms of the prompts and responses, we can actually take that out. And so you would just get some high level usage data here, but you wouldn't be able to see kind of all the way down at the prompt and response level. And so this is determined by kind of what your comfort level is and what you need to do within your org to make it work sense within your own policy and governance. But that is dependent upon, each company individually. What we built into the elvex platform is to make it flexible and moldable to that type of stuff, but it's really going to be determined by your organization, and then we can work our way back into elvex to see how that's going to work for you.
And Sachin, I know we have some CIOs and CISOs on this call, and so just calling out the ability to export this log data into like a Splunk or other SIEM or something like that for the type of alerting, analysis, things like that that might be important for an organization from a security perspective.
Yep, that's
One
right.
other question that came up here is maybe you can just like touch quickly now or soon on the privacy or visibility settings, both for apps and data sources, because I think that's important from a security and privacy internally perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Um, So there are kind of a few different ways to think about permissioning, privacy, data overall. One thing in general that's important to note is that a lot of what makes AI powerful inside of a company is giving it access to proprietary information that you might have. Now, when you give it access to your proprietary information, you want to make sure that that's being done in the right way. And so I'm going to click over to data sources here, and I'm going to just select create a new data source. A data source could be a representation of an individual file, like we kind of showed when I attached the NDA or I attached the CSV to that chat, but it also can be represented of thousands or even tens of thousands of different files. We support a whole host of different formats ranging from CSVs to Markdown to JSON to HTML that you can upload. When you upload a file, there are two different ways to do that. One can be from your computer yourself, which, not surprising. You're going to upload a whole host of files there if you want. The other way that you can upload is from a live data source, like I did via the chat. But when you do this as a data source, it exists a little bit differently. So I'll go back in here and I'll select this CSV here. And so this is not just a file that exists inside of this data source here, but this can actually be a live data source that can be updated. We sync every few minutes, and as this data source gets updated, this will persist throughout the elvex app. Now, if we have this file here, we have different permission settings that we can set. It can be private, so only me, as the person who's creating the data source, can access this data source, or a set of people that I'm adding to it, like John, or it can be public. Now, when I say public, it's not public to anybody externally. It means public. Everybody inside of your company will be able to see and use this data source. That can be important because that could be a way that you're actually helping people use something like knowledge management data or brand guidelines as a way to kind of help you as a way to help kind of get the same type of data with different apps that you're creating. So now I'm going to hop over to the app creation side. So I'm going to go back home. I'm going to create a new app here. And we'll actually go through the process of creating an app in a second, but I'm going to pop down to security and permissions. And so this is the other area where you can ensure that the right people have access to this. So this could be an app that, again, is public to everybody inside of your organization that has access to elvex. They could see this app, or it can be private, only you have access to it or those you select to have access to it. And so this is another layer of permissioning and access that's on top of it. So you would connect it to a data source here, like my employee roster for elvex. So now that is a private data source that this app has access to, but only I have access to this app. And so there's kind of two levels of accessibility or privacy that you're ensuring with this. You can also do filters within the app itself. So if there's no global setting to redact personally identifiable information, you can select apps to do that instead.
Sachin, we had a question
Yep.
about are the apps that you're showing globally available? Are they created by individual users or individual companies? I'm going to broaden that a little bit, and maybe you can just talk a bit about how we onboard and support our customers and what they have access to, sort of like out of the box, what we help them build, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so there's kind of an approach that we think makes a lot of sense to these apps. So we do have a host of different kind of use case pre-built apps that we can help you create, but we're not going to load those into your elvex instance to start out. The main reason why is because the power of a platform like this is you can fine tune and make these apps super bespoke to your needs. So we, of course, can help you create these apps, but we really want you to think hard about how is this app gonna, how does this app need to benefit me directly, and how should it be fine tuned for me? So I'll actually go through the process of maybe creating an app here. So I'm gonna ask elvex to help me build a new app. Um, So it's going to pull up an app builder here. And I'll click over to that app builder. And I'm going to say, this is going to be an app that will help me generate a newsletter for elvex. I want it connected to our brand. Actually, I think brand guidelines, and to have knowledge about our product suite. So what this is going to do is take in my request, take in the knowledge that we have about the best way to build apps, and it's actually going to pull in a function here called suggest new app to hopefully build a really kind of well thought out app that is going to be a newsletter generator for us. So in this case, we see it right here. It's going to summarize kind of like what it did here, what it's adhering to, what it should have access to. And so these are kind of the rules that we'll have in relation to this app and the data sources. So I'm going to click on create draft app config, which is just the settings for this. And that's going to click over to elvex newsletter generator here, where it's going to give me the full transparency around these settings, right? So it's going to give me the title. Maybe I'll put this as marketing, the description, the rules that I have. That's including some of the things that I mentioned specifically in my request here. And then I'm going to enable maybe a couple of data sources that I might want to query here. So maybe this one, and maybe our release notes, right? So those are two things. I'm going to enable web routing and data analysis were two things that it suggested. Do you want to build a newsletter? Will be the welcome message. I'm going to make this private. Now I'll make it public for everybody at elvex to use. And I'm going to use, let's try the latest from OpenAI. So let's switch over to the 4 mini. And I'm going to save and publish. So that's how quick it is to build an app inside of elvex that you now have available and are ready to go here. So we can see that pop up in my recent apps. And that's why we're not necessarily saying that you should just go with built or pre-baked apps that are just kind of populated in the interface itself. That's not to say we might not offer that stuff up later, but right now we found it to be very valuable for people to get in the framework of just building the apps that they need for their exact thing that they're trying to create, and then using that over the process of their kind of use of elvex overall. And so this is cool now. So this is a newsletter generator, and so I'm going to actually go back to my home app, and I'm going to say I need to generate a newsletter. So again, your home app is where you can go to ask a whole series of things, whether it's building an app, whether it's just personalized stuff for you, or you can use it as an app router. And so it's going to suggest the app that we just created here. I'm going to click on that, and boom. Now we have that app ready to go. So did that cover that question, John? Remind me if there's anything that I missed out on covering with that.
I think you're good. I also gave a text response in the Q&A panel, so people have a summary. But I think that was a good explanation. There's a couple more questions we can get to, unless there's other stuff that you're going to jump to immediately, Gene.
No, let's get to the questions.
Okay, cool. So there's a question here about, I'm going to summarize it basically and give you some direction. If you can jump back into data sources and talk about our strategy for building out data connectors and how that helps companies connect to internal knowledge in places like Confluence and other platforms that might hold important grounding information for apps that they'd like to build. And then also maybe just talk about the number of files that we can support uploaded, size of files, like any restrictions or limitations that might be important for customers to be aware of.
Yeah. So on the first point, just in terms of like how we're thinking about data connectors, we're tackling these by categories. That's how we're rolling out our integrations, and we're gonna be integrating with more and more things all the time. So the first category of items that we tackled is kind of basic file storage. So that is why you see Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, Dropbox, where people are just storing files. These might be areas where they get updated regularly. That's certainly the case with Google Drive, where you might have spreadsheets, Google Docs that are regularly getting changed. And so we support the kind of like live integrations there where we will update that data every few minutes. But there are other categories of data where you can see yourselves integrating with those to make your apps more powerful. So one of those you mentioned, John, which is knowledge management, wiki, kind of intranet style stuff. So that would be your confluences of the world, your notions of the world, kind of anything where you are having internal knowledge stored that you want the AI to have access to. So that's one whole category. Another category that we're looking at is ticketing. So this is mostly related to support areas. So companies like Zendesk or Jira would be areas that we could plug into. Another category would be kind of CRM based systems. So that would be Salesforce, HubSpot, where we could pull in information there to help power apps. And then we're thinking broadly about databases too. So a lot of people are now, mature organizations are storing a lot of their data inside of data lakes, data warehouses, via Snowflake, via Databricks. So how can we connect directly with those to make that data available to apps too? In terms of the number of files, we can support thousands of files within a single data source. And the size is dependent upon. Actually, I don't actually know if there is a limitation on the size front. John, do you?
There's not, but if you're intending to upload like petabytes of data, maybe just have a conversation with us first. But for
Yeah,
most practical business use cases right now, no, there's no file size limits or number of file limits.
exactly. And you should just know that the more the more information you upload as a data source and you make available to an AI, the more probability you'll have for areas where AI could get confused if there are two things pointing to the same thing. So having clean data and good data is really important here. It's important for kind of every area of software, but that doesn't change for this too. So you just want to make sure that if you are uploading data, that it is good, clean data, referenceable data that an AI can use to answer questions.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add there is just in terms of if you jump back to the data sources screen, you'll see that you can have a number of different data sources. Some of them can have overlapping data in them. Otherwise, you might create unique data sources that have unique files in them. But there's no restriction on associating an app with one or many data sources, which is helpful so that you can really refine the information that you want that app to operate off of. As an example, you might have a customer support app that is referencing both internal documentation and public documentation. You might have another app that's built and integrated into a user-facing support chat that shouldn't have access to any of the internal documentation, but should only reference public information. So the flexibility to pair apps with the appropriate data sources and manage all of that with ease is a real big value add for enterprise users.
All right. Other questions?
And yeah, I have a few more here. The question about will elvex users be able to start sharing apps with other users outside of the organization, like an elvex app marketplace?
Not yet, but that is certainly something that we've heard a few different times. We're always just wary of enabling something like that from like a security and privacy standpoint. So we don't like if we did something like that, that would probably only be accessible to an admin or a super admin where they feel comfortable sharing certain apps with a public kind of marketplace style area. Think about it as like a GPT store or something like that. Um, but we probably would not offer that up at the user level because some of that stuff might include sensitive information. That said, like I said, that not the first time that's been requested, and certainly something we could see ourselves offering up. Maybe the kind of compromise there is we can take the apps, we can anonymize them, so long as we have permission from the underlying companies and make those as kind of like templates that could be available for people to pull from.
Cool. There's another question here about when will Llama be supported, or will Llama be supported as a platform to connect to? And maybe we can broaden that and just talk through the strategy for supporting platforms and models broadly.
Yeah, we our approach to this is we want to support any and all of the best models that are out there. One of which is Llama 3.1, I think is the latest that Meta released. And our take here is that we don't want to just support the proprietary models that are out there in the world, like a Gemini or a OpenAI or an Anthropic as a provider. We want to support the best of open source too, Llama being one of those. And so there's a couple of different ways that you could see us supporting those. One is through one of the kind of like AI open source providers that can stand these up. An example of that would be Grok, where we could support the model on top of Grok and then make that available for you. There are other companies that are really interested in hosting the models themselves and then making that available to us to plug into this interface. But yes, we are actually working on supporting Llama 3.1 and I guess the Llama series of models overall. That should be something that we offer up very soon. And if there are any other open source models, tell us and we will work on supporting those as well as we start to continue to add providers and platforms here. We're pretty quick at adding stuff. So, for example, when Anthropic released Sonnet 3.5, we released that the same day as available inside of elvex. When OpenAI released for Omni Mini and for Omni, I think we did that within 24 to 48 hours. So adding these platforms are something that we're really focused on. Adding the providers are something that we're focused on. We don't want you to have this false choice of you have to go all in on one provider or another. We want you to feel comfortable that you can select and choose as you see fit. Like I did when I was running elvex right now. Anthropic wasn't working and I had to switch and I switched and it started working. And so that's just an example of why it's important to have access to different models so that you not only get the best, latest and greatest, but you have a fail-safe so that if you need to switch, you can switch really easily and you're not beholden to one provider or another.
Can you just talk through, Sachin, also like other reasons it might be important to have access to multiple models, maybe based on use case or personal user preferences, things like that?
Yeah, for sure. So the models that all have their like kind of puts and takes with what they're good at and what they're not good at. With Anthropic, it tends to be a little bit more on the safe side. It tends to be a little bit more explanatory in what it's doing, especially if you look at Claude 3 Opus. And they tend to be a little bit more performative when they're working with the models, right? OpenAI models tend to be a little bit more direct, terse, and in our experience, they tend to hallucinate a little bit more than some of the other models that are out there. All of these have, like I said, their different kind of advantages and disadvantages, and so it is just important to recognize, and this could be something we offer down the road, where not only do we route your requests to the right apps, you could see us potentially routing requests to the right models based on preferences that you might have on the cost side and the performance side. And so, not something we have available yet through elvex, but something we could offer down the road. And it's just something that we think people should be aware of overall, why you should use one model over another. And feel free to add to that, John, if you have something else.
Well, I just realized I'm talking now, so I should probably turn my camera on so it's not just like a voice from the void. But I'll just plug the webinar that you did a couple weeks ago, where that was like a primary topic, talking about the different models, showing some experiments, and helping orient people to some of the benefits and drawbacks, or at least just like considerations for the different models that are available. I do have another question. You probably could have predicted this would have come up at some point, but here we are near the end and it's come up. What's elvex's pricing model?
Oh yeah, sure. So we're taking a very different approach to pricing around this stuff relative to maybe the industry at large. We'll see if this is smart or not for ourselves, but it's certainly smart for people that use elvex. And so instead of basing this on a seat-based model, which is what you have with most of the providers out there, we decided to not go that route. Two reasons. The main reason is that we don't think companies should be forced into this concept of who should get access to this that I feel comfortable paying for. Like I said at the very beginning in the slide deck, this can upskill and up-level everybody. Everybody should have an opportunity to play with this technology. And so, because of that, we said, we don't care if you invite all of your company to this. That's not how we're going to charge. Invite everybody that you want to it. How we're going to charge is based off of the number of requests that you put through. So, the more you use it, the more it costs for you on elvex. And so, that's our method of pricing here, where we're pricing based off of usage. And there are some tiers that we have where the more kind of enterprisey you want things, like if you want a SAML connection, if you want to make sure that you have the ability to see logs, that's going to be in like the enterprise tier. So there is some feature and functionality breakout, but the main way that we're pricing this is based off of usage, where we think the value is and where we think it makes the most sense for the companies that we work with. If you use it more, you pay more. If you use it more, you're likely getting more value out of this stuff. And you don't have to gate it behind a per seat model where only certain people will get access to it.
Cool. I think that brings us through. I think we've answered all the questions. If we haven't answered one of your questions, please ask it again and bring it to our attention, and we'll fit it in here. But I think we've gotten through pretty much everything, Sachin.
Great. I don't think there's much more to show inside of elvex. I hope you guys found this valuable. I hope you're excited about the potential of AI. If you're interested in chatting with us directly more, please reach out to me, Sachin at elvex.ai, or John at elvex.ai. And we can walk you through kind of a personalized demo. We can also talk to you about how this might be value for your company. But outside of this, I hope this was just broadly helpful and just telling you a little bit about where this space is, what problems it exists, and how we're approaching solving those problems. Like we said, at elvex, we want to help you harness AI. We want to help you unleash that AI and accelerate the adoption for your whole org. We think if we can help you do that, it's going to pay itself back in spades for your organization. So that said, I think that's it. Happily can give you guys back 9 minutes. Thanks everybody for attending, and feel free to contact us or email us if you have any other questions. Thanks so much.